Did you vote today?
Yes.
I hope you did. If you did, you performed a laudable act. I know that some of you are thinking, well, it's only a primary, so it's no big deal, right? Anybody thinking that? No. Well, I'm here to tell you it's a very big deal. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and friends, the caucus and primary election system that we have in this country is a crucial part of our process in choosing candidates for the office of President of the United States. Now, I will admit that due to confusion and ignorance as to how the primary system works leads to poor voter turnout. For example, in November 2008, in our presidential election, Michigan had a 70% voter turnout, which is pretty good. But consider that 10 months earlier, only 20% of those voters voted in the presidential primary, where we choose the person who we're going to vote for in November. Well, it's pretty obvious that, mathematically speaking, a vote in the primary carried a little more weight than the vote in the presidential election. Hopefully, I'll be able to explain a little bit about how this arcane system works and encourage all of you to vote in the next primary. This year, there will be 56 caucus or primary events during the election year. That's one for every state, as well as the District of Columbia and 5 territories. Now, we're going to speak a little bit about the Michigan primary, but I want you to keep in mind that of those 56 contests, there are almost 56 different ways that candidates are chosen and delegates are allotted. Almost every state and territory does it differently than the rest. But however they choose their candidate, eventually every state and territory will send some delegates based on its population to the National Convention. And for the Republican Party, the National Convention is going to be held in Tampa, Florida, the week of August 27th. By the time the convention rolls around, most of those candidates will be obligated to vote for a particular, most of those delegates will be obligated to vote for a particular candidate. However, there are going to be 126 superdelegates, people who can vote for any candidate of their choice. So the candidates spend a lot of time wooing and courting those votes. Now, the general delegates who are already obligated to vote due to their state's caucus or primary election results are only obligated to vote for that candidate at the first ballot in the National Convention. If there's no clear winner after the first ballot, all delegates are eligible or able to vote for any candidate in subsequent ballots. So you can see that every state primary and every delegate vote is very important. It's even important to come in second or third because a lot of states, like Michigan, allot their delegates proportionally to the top 2 or even 3 vote getters. Now in Michigan this year, our primary is especially important for 2 major reasons. The first is, our primary is an early primary. And it's interesting how that came to be. In 2010, the Republican National Committee, or the RNC, tried to limit and restrict how the states ran their primaries. They didn't want any primaries before February, and they wanted most of the states to have primaries in March. Well, Florida defied the RNC and moved their primary to January 31st, and then the scramble began. Some of the states that are traditionally early states, like New Hampshire, had to move their primary up into early January. And so Michigan followed suit, and we moved our primary from March 6th to today, February 28th. Now the RNC wasn't happy with that, and so they penalized every state that moved their primary up by cutting in half the number of delegates that we can vote at the National Convention. So for Michigan, we normally have 59 votes. This year we're only going to have 30. So naturally the question is, why would we move our primary ahead for 7 days and lose 29 convention votes? Well, the answer is to have a greater influence in the choosing process. Because we had our primary today, Michigan became only the 10th state to do so. And in politics, you know that polls and primaries and caucuses carry a lot of weight, and early results carry even more weight. So whoever wins in Michigan is going to have a tremendous momentum going come next Tuesday when it's Super Tuesday and 10 more states have their primaries. It's very similar to selling a product. You always have an advantage if you can get your product to market first. And so Michigan is key because we have an early primary. The other reason that Michigan has a special place this year is because Michigan is considered a home state for Mitt Romney. So Mitt took this state, Michigan, in the 2008 presidential primary. So this year, if Mitt loses, or if another candidate even comes close, that candidate is going to be seen as a serious contender. It may just be that whoever wins the primary tonight could get the party's nomination come August. So I, for one, am going to be watching the results very carefully. Now, I hope you see the importance of voting in presidential primaries. If you voted today, I hope that this explanation will make you feel even better that you did. If you didn't vote today, well, I hope you'll vote next time. But just remember, your involvement in the primary election process can make a huge difference in whom we get to choose as our next president. Mr. Toastmaster.